The Pry Monster. When they had said goodbye to Auntie Dot, Daddy and Jeremy James walked down a broad street which was called Whitehall. Jeremy James wondered if it was called Whitehall because the pigeons had been there as well. In the middle of the street was a large white block, which Daddy said was called the Cenotaph, and was a monument to people who'd been killed in the war. "Is war a good thing?" asked Jeremy James. "No," said Daddy, "it's very bad." "Did Nelson fight in a war?" "Yes, against the French." "Well, if war's a bad thing, why did they put Nelson on top of a pillar if being on top of a pillar is a good thing?" Daddy explained that war was bad, but winning a war was good. Jeremy James asked if winning a war was good for the people who had been killed, and Daddy said no. It wasn't even good for the people who hadn't been killed. "So, who is it good for?" asked Jeremy James. "Well, nobody really," said Daddy, "except soldiers and politicians." "Who's politicians?" asked Jeremy James. Daddy explained that politicians were people who told other people what to do and pretended it was for their own good. "Is Mummy a politician?" asked Jeremy James. "No," said Daddy. "When Mummy tells you to do something, it is for your own good. And when I tell you to do something, it's also for your own good. But when politicians tell you to do something, it's usually for their good." By now they had reached a narrow street which was closed off by a gate, and Daddy said this was Downing Street, where the Prime Minister lived. The Prime Minister was the bossiest politician of them all. Even the politicians who told everybody else what to do were themselves told what to do by the Prime Minister. And, as a matter of fact, said Daddy, it was the Prime Minister who was ruining the country. At that moment, there was a buzz of excitement from all the people standing near the gate, and everybody moved back as it was opened. And through it came a group of smartly dressed people surrounded by a group of less smartly dressed people who were carrying cameras, microphones, notebooks and pencils. "Look," said Daddy, "it's the Prime Minister." Suddenly, the whole group stopped right next to Daddy and Jeremy James, and the Prime Minister, with a smile that came straight from the mouth, leaned down and asked Jeremy James his name. "Jeremy James," said Jeremy James. "And do you know who I am, Jeremy James?" asked the Prime Minister. "You're the Prime Monster," said Jeremy James. "Prime Minister," said the Prime Minister. "Good. What a clever boy. And are you going to vote for me at the next election, eh?" Everybody laughed. Jeremy James didn't know what an election was or why everybody was laughing, but the look on the Prime Minister's face made it clear that Jeremy James was supposed to say yes. "No," said Jeremy James. The Prime Minister looked surprised. "Oh, and may I ask why not?" "Because," said Jeremy James, "you're ruining the country." The Prime Minister looked even more surprised, and the smile disappeared from his face, and he glanced at the people around him. He said, "He obviously means running the country." "No, I don't," said Jeremy James. "You're a bossy politician." "Ha, ha, ha," and laughed the Prime Minister, glaring at Daddy, who studied the top of Jeremy James's head. "Another little joke from the opposition," and he walked quickly and stiffly away. The man with the camera took a photograph of Jeremy James, and another man with a notebook came up to him. "Well done, young man," he said. "We'll have you on the front page tomorrow. Jeremy James accuses Prime Minister of ruining the country." Everyone was smiling and nodding and congratulating Jeremy James. He wasn't quite sure what all the fuss was about, but he had a strange feeling that perhaps one day he might be put on top of a pillar, like Nelson, for having saved England.